Coming up next on MCN, the McAllen Cable Network, the Development Corporation of McAllen from McAllen City Hall. The Development Corporation appointed by the City Commission is charged with making recommendations on how to use money that's been raised from the half-cent sales tax that was approved by McAllen voters on May the 3rd, 1997. The recommendation is made to the City Commission. They make the final decision. And now, the Development Corporation of McAllen.
I'll call this meeting to order. Item number 1 on the agenda is approval of the minutes. If you've had a moment to review the minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve item 1A and 1B.
So moved. Second.
There's a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Item number 2 on the agenda is receive and file unaudited financial statements for the month ending March 31st, 2023.
Thank you, Mr. President. For the month ending March 31st, 2023, if you turn to the first sheet, that is your balance sheet. The Development Corporation McAllen had total assets of $24.5 million, of which about $22 million is investments. Total liabilities amounted to $369,000, leaving a fund balance of about $24.2 million. I do want to advise the board that of that $24 million, the budget for the month ending March 31st, 17.6 of it has been committed for other projects. At the end of April, another $3 million was committed, leaving a rough budgeted fund balance of $3 million. So the fund balance presented here on your balance sheet isn't necessarily what you're seeing on your budget. This is a picture of your fund balance at the point of time, but the funds have been committed. So, and I can answer any questions regarding the balance sheet. Now, if you turn to the next page, that is your statement of revenues and expenses as of March 31st, 2023. If you go over to the year-to-date actuals, you'll see total revenues amounted to about $12.5 million. Your expenditures amounted to about $7.2 million. There was also transfers out of about $4.7 million, leaving revenues over expenditures of $556,000. When you add that to your beginning fund balance of $23 million, you end up with an ending fund balance on actuals of $24 million. I'm happy to report sales taxes meeting budget. As of March, it was 5% ahead of budget. It exceeded budget for the month of March would be at 50%, and actuals came in at 55%. And year to date, I believe we're at least 4% ahead of last year, actual over actual. Now I'll answer any questions regarding the budgeted, I'm sorry, the actual expenses.
What's the other, well, yeah, the $4.7 million in other finances?
So the other financing uses, if we turn to page 6 of the report, those are the transfers out, the various transfers out we do. And the largest transfer out you have there is $3.2 million to our infrastructure improvement fund, which was for the acquisition of some land. I believe it's the Moorfield transaction.
Okay.
And then we also have the debt service for the Texas A&M building in there, and as well as funding for the Metro Transit system.
Roy, is it appropriate to ask what the status is of the press box and where are we at with that funding? Is that appropriate to ask at this time?
Sure. Yeah.
Yep, we have received a request for payment. I know we've processed one payment for that. Our engineer department goes and verifies the work on the invoice. So we do have an invoice. I don't remember the exact amount off the top of my head, but there is a payment coming up soon here.
So as construction is done, the draw is requested and then we pay.
Yes, sir. The construction.
That's the appropriate way of doing it.
Yes, we go verify what's being invoiced. But the engineering department does. Finance won't go check it out.
Well, we were advancing dollar for dollar, right? I assume. Like they put in $1, we put in $1. When we hit our million, we just stop advancing on our part.
Correct.
We're not necessarily funding towards percentage of completion.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's correct.
But from your indication, everything's good, it's on target, it's in
They're
budget.
probably, a little behind, a little slower than they had hoped. But yeah, construction's ongoing, looking pretty good out there. It's going to be a really nice facility.
Thank you.
If there are no further questions, staff recommends acceptance of the report.
So moved.
Second. Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay, item number 3 is a report from the McAllen Chamber of Commerce on their Innovation Texas program.
Mr. President, just as background, while Josh is getting a seat, you looked at this last summer during budget, and you actually had a presentation by the Chamber where you approved moving forward with the funding, contingent on the Chamber coming back and making a presentation and giving you a little bit more details. So that's what we're doing here. So even though it says report, you've already taken that action, and we're just looking for your final approval today, if that's what you want to do, to move forward with the funding.
More of program approval versus funding approval?
Correct.
Right.
Right.
We're just approving.
That's
like
a good way to say it. Yeah.
Program.
More
Right.
of the
Okay.
program approval.
All right.
Thank you, Roy, and thank you, board members of the Development Corp. As Roy had mentioned, I'm here to be able to answer a little bit more questions regarding the programming. If we can summarize the program itself or the initiative that we want to propose to the Development Corp. As a partnership, we want to be able to approach small business development in a two-pronged approach. One being continued education, being able to provide a increased quality of resources and skill sets that our entrepreneurs or small business owners can therefore obtain and be able to become more resilient, focus on commercialization of their products and services, in hopes to be able to foment a stronger local economy. This also provides added value to both members and non-members of the McAllen Chamber of Commerce. And the other approach is the tackling of a historical challenge, which is access to capital by a lot of the entrepreneurs here. And if we go into some figures, if you look at minority groups, they're the groups that typically struggle with obtaining capital and really have a low knowledge level of how to obtain traditional capital as well, let alone non-traditional forms of financing for these businesses. So the grant system that we propose is to be able to provide grants to those businesses that have gone through these levels of programs, which we're phasing out in phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, depending on the growth level that the business is in. We have partnerships already lined up for the education component that we want to go ahead and pursue, and be able to identify some of these businesses. As I mentioned in the last presentation of the Development Corp, we made the recommendation that we should be under no obligation to provide grants, although we would like for them to be dedicated through this partnership. We're under no obligation to provide a grant if we feel that the companies that are coming out of this programming are not at that level yet where they can take in some capital and be able to come back and say, I've invested it on X machinery to be able to commercialize my product in volume, et cetera. This is typically a quick summarization of how we want to go ahead and approach this. We are doing the continued education in cohorts. We've added a schedule as well, a timeline, an updated timeline for you all in the attachments that are in your packet, so hopefully everybody's taking the time to look at that. We are scheduling to start in late May and be able to work in 4 to 6 week intervals until we get to a point where we can provide a venue or an opportunity for these entrepreneurs to provide a pitch and basically propose where they would like to use some of the grant monies towards in their business. So again, it's a quick summarization of what we would like to propose. It's, again, a two-pronged approach to be able to address continued education as well as access to capital through grants.
Questions?
I have a few questions, if I could start out, Josh, I was going to ask you, at the last meeting, we did ask you for a projection. I think we said maybe a 3 or 5 year, Roy, so that we'd get more of the global, revenue sources. And so I don't see it in here unless you provided that separately, but I think that the board should receive that. Okay, and then, so I had a few questions. So you're saying that you're going to start in late May. So are you ready to do that? Because I know within this request, you're asking for funding of a staff member. Do you have the staff and capacity to start the program as you planned it?
Yeah. We've made adjustments internally so that we can have a quick start. We are incorporating the same request in the budget that is on your attachment. We have already made the internal commitments to get our application portal in place. We've already aligned some of our partners to have the appropriate schedules ready to go. We haven't expended anything of what was already proposed in the initial presentation because we're still pending an agreement with the Development Corp. But as soon as we get a green light, we're ready to kick this off in late May. We've already gone some dates already scheduled, and it's included on the timeline as well. In terms of projection, just to kind of go back into the prior comment, we are still projecting at least the funding that we hope to receive from the Development Corp to help us continue to monitor these businesses for at least 12 months, right? So be able to report back and say if this is of satisfaction to the Development Corp and the partnership they want to develop, we would like to consider continuing to fund these sorts of programs in partnership with the Development Corp and hopefully continue to provide grants for some of these businesses as well.
So then my question was, I don't know how to say this, but you have a person that's going to run this program. So
Yes.
For me to feel comfortable that we have the capability, because it's quite a complex, endeavor.
Yeah.
So that's my question, because certainly it's not you. So it's someone, and so can you talk to us a little bit about?
Yeah, so we have Jorge, and we have a staff of 3 in this department that are ready to be able to help us with the intake. We already have a waiting list as well of entrepreneurs that are willing to apply and be considered for this program. As I mentioned before, we would like to have another one that's more dedicated on just the program itself, but we're willing to make that adjustment at least in the meantime while we search for that 4th individual and be able to have that person dedicated and start shifting a little bit of the roles that we've set up as of now for the program.
But it isn't Jorge, that would be your
Yeah,
VP
it's in Jorge's department, and then we have 2 other individuals, and then myself as well as support, to at least be able to launch this program while we search for a 4th member to help us be more dedicated towards this program.
But you don't worry that could, as you search for someone and kick off the program, it would stretch you guys a bit thin? Sounds like it would kick off a little quick.
Yeah, there's some flexibility as well that we've ran a couple simulations on. I think the worst simulation that we ran is what would happen if we were to delay this for another 30 days. We do have that opportunity to do that, but we feel comfortable with the amount of applicants that we would receive because we're taking in cohorts from 10 to 20, and we're also doing it in partnership with higher education institutions as well to help us with the facilitation of the programming. So really the heavy load of work that we're expecting to receive right from the get-go is just the application intake, being able to generate the reporting.
Remind me again, when you say cohort, what does that encompass for you?
So for every workshop or class that we're going to provide, we're calling each class a cohort. So a cohort of anywhere between 10 to 20 unique entrepreneurs or businesses would be participating in these classes or workshops.
So four groups of 20, right? And each of those discover phases, how long?
The discover phase is the initial phase, and we're looking at 4 to 6 weeks for the cohort itself for the class. And it all depends on the type of entrepreneur and their industry that they're focusing on as well with their venture. So for something like tech or manufacturing, we're looking at extending that to the CAP 6-week programming. But if it's something like retail, food, service-oriented sector, then we're looking at the shorter period of 4 to 5 weeks.
So four groups, let's say there's 10 in each, right? That's 40 individuals, entrepreneurs, or businesses.
Yeah.
Each of those is going to be provided in English and Spanish. That's 4 groups. That's eight classes, right? Or how are you going to do that? Is that what it is?
Yeah, so through our
For 6 weeks?
Yes, yeah.
An hour a week?
It's one cohort each week. So we typically how we run the cohorts in partnership with the Entrepreneurship and Commercialization Center and UTRGV It's one class per week that is facilitated through our partners. And within each course, we provide a follow-up item that we follow up with on the following week. So we try to keep them going along the 4 to 6 week process. In both English and Spanish and in hybrid models as well. They can either be there in person or they can join virtually.
And I guess it says the deliverable for phase 1 would be 40 businesses supported at full subsidy.
Yes.
How many applicants do you have now, or how many?
Right now we have 23 different unique entrepreneurs that are looking to apply at full subsidy, some of which have been a part of some earlier programs that the McAllen Chamber had launched before, like innovation, the innovation grants and the Latino Hope programming as well.
So what does full subsidy mean for?
So each course, since it's a sort of certified course that we're going to be providing through the university, we would be paying for the class itself, or the registration for the class, and then they would come out with a certification at the end of the course. So we pretty much put in full subsidy because we have the ability to, pay for the 20 at X amount so that we can balance the expense out that we have projected on the balance. However, we would like to also propose the ability to subsidize at a lesser amount simply to keep the entrepreneur accountable to continue to participate for each one of the courses.
That's what I was going to say. So
Yeah.
you get an interested party. They do your expectation that they do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3.
You can either do phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 in that order, or we can identify or have a business that might be at an incubation phase, right? And they can start that programming later. The only programming that is mandatory for them to be eligible for the grants that we would like to provide is that phase 3 program, which is the acceleration. That programming is more focused on, if you were to receive some sort of financing, whether it's traditional or non-traditional or a grant, we teach them the basics of how to utilize the dollars and be able to maximize that investment towards the commercialization of a product or service. So essentially we want to teach them how to create the jobs and scale up.
So let's forget the grant, call it the subsidy part.
Mm-hmm.
If they were to go through phase 1, 2, and 3, or a blend of, what could be the maximum subsidy per entrepreneur?
The maximum subsidy per entrepreneur, it's 750 times 3. That's the full subsidy for, and forgive me for not having the math right away, but it's a $750 cost. Yeah.
$2,250.
Mm-hmm.
Because then in the, I guess in the budget followed by another page here, it was somewhere, it showed that all these funds would be expended by like August or something. Mm-hmm. With a small tail end through the beginning of 24, right?
Yeah.
Is that the $75,000?
The $75,000 is for the programming itself, so that's what we would like to use to be able to provide these subsidies and get these entrepreneurs through the courses in partnership with the McAllen Chamber of Commerce. But going back to that comment, Commissioner Haddad, I projected that timeline if we were to expend all of our grants as well around. Yes, but there is no obligation. That's the recommendation that we're giving.
And the grant funds would be, I guess, is there going to be a committee for that? Is there going to be a board? Would that come back to, if the Development Corp of McAllen's funding it, would those applicants come through a process? Hey, we're proposing this business receive a grant. It comes here for approval. Would it be relegated to its own board within the chamber? I guess there's a lot of questions that would revolve around.
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So if you recall in the last presentation that I gave to the Development Corp, we brought up the suggestion of perhaps the Development Corp having that fund available through your books instead of our books. And whenever we have those earmarked entrepreneurs that have gone through the programming, invite the Development Corp representative, whether it's the city manager's office or somebody else, to be able to witness the presentations that are going to be provided with the criteria that we provide to be able to make that determination.
Latino Hope.
It's almost like the pitches that happen in Latino Hope, but we're not looking at whether or not they just have a business plan or they understand the product and the market that they want to go to. It's more of a refined business pitch to be able to scale up.
So this is like already an existing module. You would score it. It's like you're not reinventing a wheel. You're just kind of starting something in-house. It's
Yeah.
You're
and-
having certain staff do it, but you're still looking for someone else to augment the staffing.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to get at. I guess this Kaufman Fast Track, right, is a established program to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I should have done it on my own. To get a better understanding for me of how it all kind of works out, I would like to see success stories or case studies from maybe other either chambers or cities or entities that are utilizing it, right? Or whether it's, I guess, financial educational institutions.
Yeah, what kind of references do they have, or what kind of successes do they have?
Or case studies, right? Because
Case
it's
studies,
easier
yeah.
for me to say,
Yeah.
hey, this is a real life scenario of how this program
Yeah.
is used. This
Exactly.
guy in Odessa had this idea. He went through this program. This is the steps it took, right? And on another scale, we had this other company that was already plateaued. This is how the program helped him,
Yeah.
right? It gives me more of a real life scenario. It allows me to better understand
How effective the programming could be.
how
You do-
effective
you
it
do
can
have
be,
that,
what benefits and value come
Yeah.
out of it, right? Because I can read through it,
That's a good question.
but it leaves me a lot of questions as to
The effectiveness
the deliverables,
of-
the effectiveness. I think to some extent the management of the program is critical. I know McAllen ISD has Incubator EDU, which is also to some extent an established program.
Which is a source of us to be able to generate leads as well.
Yeah, of course. And so, I know they implemented it very quickly, and it's probably going to take a few years for it to really
Yeah.
solidify into confidence within it.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is they're doing it as they go, which makes it difficult to be effective.
Yeah, it's a long-term game is the way that I describe it. I've described it as well in our past presentation that, when you're working on entrepreneurship-led economic development, a lot of these businesses will effectively get into that next stage of growth within the 3 to 5 year mark, right? And each one of these businesses has unique challenges along the way. Some may have an immediate effect, some may not. It depends on the nature of the business that they're in. We do have some case studies as well. The Kaufman Fast Track program is pretty much developed and implemented through the Kaufman Foundation, which is the largest nonprofit organization for entrepreneurship development in the entire country, if not the world. Some of the case studies that I could suggest looking into as a result of this programming, one local business that is from the Rio Grande Valley went through this same program, actually through each phases of what has been designed, and is now able to sell in national retail stores, right, with national brands. So that case study was a byproduct of about 2 years' work of continued education, right? It's almost like even though you're providing the classroom or the classes and workshops for these folks to be coached, you're also providing the mentoring, right? And the mentoring is really where you're guiding them on each step of the way as a coach instead of a business advisor, per se. And really what the goal is here is to just get folks to understand how to commercialize, be able to understand how to leverage debt, and be able to get them to that next phase of growth instead of, committing to obtaining a business loan and then, being tied to something that really didn't work out at the end. And, I guess in bank terms, we want to be able to make them bankable, right, and understand how to debt leverage that. But we do have some case studies that we can provide at any time. We also have, as I mentioned before, a short list of businesses that are ready to apply, some of which have already identified, if I were to get X amount of dollars, this is what I would do, right? I would go ahead and invest on a place in McAllen, be able to hire 4 or 5 CSRs, and be able to kick off the next phase of the business.
Who's doing the mentoring?
The mentoring is done in collaboration with our partners, but ultimately the effectiveness of the mentoring falls on our metrics, what we report back to the Development Corp. So we do have UTRGV that continues to provide us with, X business has gone through these workshops, they are at this level of growth, these are the needs that they have, they report that information to us. If there's something that we can do on behalf of the Chamber or even the City of McAllen and say, connect with this group, then we continue to proceed with that handoff
Is it like
effect.
SCORE, or is it somebody else?
No, it's actually through us. We provide the mentorship. It's not necessarily like SCORE, because SCORE does business planning, being able to help you with accounting and things like that. all of those resources, including SCORE, fall under the UTRGV umbrella now.
Yeah.
Right, so we have access to that. But in terms of being able to tell you all as a development corp, these are the jobs that they're targeting. This is the amount of capital investment that they're going to put in. This is the amount of growth that a business has experienced as a result of the programming. Those are metrics that we're going to have in-house. And the coaching is really focused on making sure that we meet those metrics as well at the end of the day.
Oh, that's you meant like coaching the entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a different thing. But as far as these angel investors and venture capital investors that are going to be coming in
Mm-hmm.
and hopefully offering resources, are they already committed to coming based on your schedule? I mean, how much of this angel investors and venture capitals, how much do you have that's lined up?
Quite a bit, and I've been very cautious with my approach on letting them know, about the programming, because even though we've received, I guess you can say, half an approval for this partnership, they're really more focused on the refined entrepreneurs and businesses that come out of the entire programming. So the last event that's scheduled on there, which we call Demo Day, it's really short for a demonstration day of these businesses and entrepreneurs that have already been refined through their programming. That's the event that they're really interested in, to be able to hear and see, what kind of entrepreneurs need, what kind of capital they're looking for, where are they planning to invest that capital, and see if there's a business opportunity for that. When we get to that point, we want to be able to bring in angel investors such as the RGV Angel Investor Group that we have here, that they meet in Westlaco actually, be able to vet them and say, look, these are the types of entrepreneurs that are gone through our programming. This is what you should expect, so that we can also control their investment approach so that it's not predatory, right, at the end of the day. We don't want somebody that's going to, ultimately, do a wrong deal or a bad deal for an entrepreneur, and then we end up losing that business or that viable opportunity. But we do have quite a few, a lot of which have an RGV connection, that are interested. It's just a matter of getting the activity ramped up, getting these entrepreneurs to get educated, improve on their business operations, and ultimately be able to say, when I present, this is what I would use with X amount of capital. And at the end of the, I'm sorry.
And I may have missed it whenever you were answering Commissioner Haddad's question, but the $2,250 per company, is that the cost for phase 1, 2, and 3?
That's correct.
So each phase would be $2,250?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the cap.
$750.
No, $750.
$750 each phase. Yeah.
$750 for each phase.
That's a subsidy for the class portion only.
Okay.
Right?
Correct.
Because I was just trying to get in the numbers here, because is that going for the grant fund?
For the $75,000 that's programmed in the budget.
Okay, that's for your programming.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, and then I would assume a company has to go through phase 1 before they can get to phase 2?
So
or can you have a company that is already further advanced and they don't have to go through 1 and 2, they could go straight to 3?
So I don't recall who made that question previously, but you can do it simultaneously. It doesn't have to be in order from phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 programming. We have some business owners that are interested in the programming, but they feel they're more suited for a phase 3 programming. They already have their existing business. They're just looking at, or they've already identified specifically what it takes to be able to manufacture at volume, for example. Mm-hmm. And so they would fall more in line with our phase 3 programming. So in order to be eligible for the grant, you would just need to go through the phase 3 programming, the acceleration part of the education that we're going to go ahead and provide.
Okay. And then I would assume there's some methodology y'all have to keep the salaries and indirect costs in line with the programming and grant fund. So I guess, the programming and grant fund, that's if there's 100% participation, you'd be at $375,000 of the budget. Mm-hmm. And I would assume that you're going to have your salaries and your indirect costs scale, or is that going to be the full 110 from the very beginning, not dependent upon the participation rate?
I think We can scale it down for sure. I think we're just putting high caps on those direct expenses to operate the programming, but I think it depends on what we agree in our terms to make the determination of, okay, if we don't hit that cap, then, you know, the obvious answer is we return that funding back to the development corp, but, you know, we're just providing a cap scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think that's important because I know, you know, a lot of the other services, organizations that we fund, that's one of the things we look at is the,
Flexibility for,
well, or how much is going to administration
Sure.
yeah.
as a percentage, and then what's going to the actual deliverable. And I think that methodology should ring true with this program as well.
Yeah.
Good point.
On the acceleration phase, you had opportunities to obtain capital through a competitive grant. Does that mean our grants?
Yeah, correct.
It says up to 100K.
Correct. So that would be the hypothetical, right? That's the cherry on top, right? This is, again, a proposition. We're still defining on, you know, whether or not the development corp feels that it would be better to reduce that cap or not. 100,000 would make it extremely attractive for even businesses from outside of the community to come in and relocate, right? Because there's an audience out there of businesses that are looking to seek out funding through these sorts of programs. And since it's a development corporation fund, we obviously, you know, before providing the fund, we make the prerequisite that the investment stays in McAllen, the jobs are in McAllen, et cetera. But, you know, this is kind of a way to do a temperature check and see if maybe the development corp as a board has a suggestion to reduce that to maybe 20,000, 25,000.
Yeah, I guess because you mentioned businesses that might be interested, or it could incentivize them to move to McAllen, right?
Yeah.
I would think the Innovation Texas program as a whole, right, is working with entrepreneurs or businesses that need some guidance, right? A lot of times, companies that are thinking about relocation typically seem sophisticated enough to approach EDC directly, right, and go after what I would call more traditional incentive requests. That's why the 100K comes by surprise. I mean, that's a large number. I know at the bank to approve 100K, let's say unsecured, is businesses go through a pretty lengthy application process, and so you know, I would like, you know, grant parameters. I would like to see grant parameters of, hey, this is kind of a matrix of what we would expect, the types of businesses that could get, you know, you would qualify for this size of grant based on whether it's revenue or scalability or some type of metric, right? Existing working capital, maybe investor portfolio.
A pro forma of some sort.
Yeah, something, right? But I mean, it would have to be, there'd have to be something to understand. Well, also, even if we'd be administering the grants and approving them, we'd have to understand, well, what's our guide? What's our matrix? How would we be delivering these rather than just sort of, you know, discussing each one kind of on different, you want some kind of even playing field, right?
Yeah.
Because as fair as we try to be, if you do it one by one, case by case, you're going to get very, very different results, right? Whether it's risk or whether it's the person's presentation or years in business. But, and the reason I ask so many questions, honestly, is because I think a program like this is great, but I also see this isn't a one-time bullet. Once you start something like this, the development corp is now typically, you know, partnered up forever, and it never gets smaller, right? It's likely to be 300 for first year, second year, 500 year 3, 7 if it's successful, 750, $1 million, right?
Yeah.
So the results themselves will generate a larger ask, and once these grants are expended, the salaries continue, programming costs continue, indirect costs continue, and so once once we commit, you know, we've got to think sustainability of the program. Will it work? And is there sufficient, I think, kind of detail in here to really have the program outlined for me to make a decision today? Did the participants at any point have to pay for something? Or
That's something that we want to go ahead and consider, because obviously when the participants pay, it's like they have skin in the game as well, and that's kind of the rule of thumb that we want to keep track throughout the entire programming that we're providing. The same thing, to your comment, Commissioner Haddad, it's the general criteria that is used is a pro forma of some sort, right? To be able to say, okay, if we provide X amount in grant funding, how much private capital is going to be injected, what type of jobs are going to be created? Because at the end of the day, what we would recommend for the Development Corp is to handle it with some sort of performance agreement if possible, where you keep the business accountable that they do commit to the next steps, right, with the funding that's going to be provided. It could be in the form of a reimbursement. It can be on a staggered approach where they provide X amount, maybe $10,000 now, $15,000 later. It really depends on how you want to manage that approach, but being able to keep them accountable on that criteria goes a long way. I've had experience before with $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 grants. And nowadays, I mean, it can only get you so far. I mean, if you're looking at a business that's going to manufacture something in volume, it doesn't really take you that very far. What we used to do previously is, if you would get a $20,000 grant, the next step for us would be to get them referred to SBA and consider maybe a 7A loan, because they consider that as a cash injection for the business itself, and then they can leverage that to be able to get a loan themselves. That also boosts the accountability, right? Because now you're tied to the hip with a bank institution that has the capacity and resource to be able to chase you down if things go wrong. But something that we can also look at with this partnership is what we want to do at the end of the day in terms of the programming is being able to say, okay, this is the entrepreneur that has gone through X, Y, and Z. Even if you don't provide a grant, right, on behalf of the Development Corp, that entrepreneur has already identified the next steps that they need to take. So it's just a matter of whether they seek the funding through the city, or they seek the funding through a bank, or they seek the funding through a private investor. They already know what it takes to be able to get them to that next step, right? So for us as a chamber, we already see it as a massive win for us to even provide the education piece with the grant itself, or the grant that we're asking for. We can go and we still have time to be able to hone down on the criteria and guidelines of how we can manage the grant itself, because the grant is expected to be something that is as an option offered at the end of all the programming, which I believe is scheduled for September on that timeline, and be able to maneuver through that. Again, the recommendation for us as a chamber is for you all as a Development Corp to have it on your books ready, so that if we do present that opportunity for consideration for a grant for some of these recipients, that you all can make that determination along with our recommendation to whether provide a grant, whether it's $15,000, $20,000, $50,000, or who knows, $100,000 if it's something that's going to create a large amount of jobs or has some other money tied to it, et cetera. I mean, I'm just running on hypothetical scenarios here.
Josh, but the Development Corporation would be involved in approving individual grants?
It's a suggestion, but again, the structure of that, we can have.
Seems like it should be separate from the Development Corporation. That's just my
I think it should be the Development Corp.
Or at least a member.
That's what I was saying.
At least a member of the board be involved. But let me ask you, going back to Sebi's point on the 100,000, wouldn't you develop some kind of a threshold, like these are going to qualify this small? It depends on their revenues or the size of their, business, what type of grant they could be able to get. We're not going to be doing 100,000. I think we do need to scale it down, but it needs to be tied to some set of guidelines. But what I think is happening here, let me ask a question, because I believe we've already worked on putting this on our budget. So I think what we had was a lot of questions, which a lot of them are coming up again today. So there's a lot of it mechanics that we don't understand. So wouldn't you be putting together a procedural guide that we can all be comfortable with, starting with your staffing? You have a rubric that you use for the program? I'm sure all of that is there in place. Is it not?
The program.
Yeah, no, we have the rubrics in place. The rubrics is a standardized rubrics that we have with our partnership.
So you're not having to reinvent anything. But
no.
For us, we need to get to that place where we feel confident that this is going to be able to move forward. The other question I had, getting back to his, is do we want this to grow, or is it going to stay static at 300 grants? And are you going to come back, or do you have a plan to grow it? Because I think you had gotten another maybe 10,000 from someone. Are you actively seeking to grow this, or are you going to wait That's why I keep asking that we should look at a projection as to what are your plans to do with this program? What is the future of the program, aside from everything we're asking you today?
Yeah.
So,
It's a valid question. To play it safe, we would like to run this as a pilot program just to see what type of engagement and quality of entrepreneurs we get and what type of quality we get at the output part of the programming itself. I think right now the urgency is to be able to get the programming out, even if we don't have the grant approved in place. The programming is going to go a long way for just the education piece of this whole programming. We have some contingent contributions that are on the pipeline as well for this first year from corporate sponsors that are willing to put in some dollars into the programming itself, not necessarily the grant. We have that at $50,000 from one of our major private members that we have in part of our membership that wants to partner up with this. So we do have a projection for this first year, and we do anticipate to hopefully come back and say this is the output that we're producing. If the Development Corp feels that they would like to continue to partner with us, then we can go ahead and make the suggestion to do it at that same level. I personally don't anticipate for us to even reach the 100,000 grant recommendation for this first year. I mean, this is a measurement where we're going to see what type of entrepreneurs and the quality that we have out there are going to be going through this program. So even if it's just a minor grant of, $10,000, $15,000, it's way better than the, I believe, $6,000 that were provided before through the innovation grant, where you're typically just funding a few things here and there.
and then another question on the budget that you provided to us under the, where 75,000, that's the actual subsidy portion. There's nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Josh, so I'm clear on the salaries. On this page, the central page, you've got Vice President of Economic Development, but on the last page where it looks like a budget form, it says and other staff. So is this Vice President Jorge?
Correct.
So is this money going to supplant where he's getting paid now, or it's in addition to, or what are we talking about there?
Let me go ahead and open up this spot here.
I mean, because you fund Jorge right now through the
Right.
chamber.
Yes. So this is hopefully, because we've started this a little bit late in the game. So what we would like to do is be able to free up a space within the organization to be able to hire somebody else, which would be that fourth staff member that I had talked about before. We don't anticipate to get to that $110,000 level. This is just kind of the high cap of what we essentially would hypothetically pay somebody to be in that position. But I just noticed right now that it says other staff on there when it should have been just one staff member.
So are we looking at another vice president? Is that what it is? It's a new slot?
Yes.
But you're saying that it's an existing staff member. Is that what you're saying? It's an existing staff member that
It's
you're
an, yeah, I'm sorry, hold on. I'm getting a little confused here with the document that was sent over. So this is for Vice President of Economic Development, right, which right now is Jorge. We just changed his title in anticipation for this program before it launched. But right now he is being supported by the monies that we have at the chamber. And so the other staff here is for us to be able to supplement and be able to have somebody that's just in charge of the program itself. So this should have read other staff instead of just Vice President of Economic Development.
Roy, this is, there's a lot of money here and a lot of moving parts, a lot of things that are new to the Development Corporation. And I don't know if you've already got a point person on the staff here that's working on this project, but if you don't, I think it'd be really good to have somebody who's working, hand in hand with the chamber and can really understand this as well and help distill this information back to us. I think that would be very helpful.
Okay. That person's not been identified, but we can certainly look at that.
On the overall partners, honestly, I see the little icons, right?
Mm-hmm.
TMAC, UTRGV, PNC, SBA, ISD, Google Startups. Do we have, when you say they're partners, how committed are they right now? Do we have letters of support? What exactly are each of these partners doing, right? I mean, I know SBA is going to say, well, we're here to guide anyone that wants a 7A loan, right?
Yeah.
But that's they're a partner to the whole city for that.
Correct.
I'm saying, how are they a partner specific to this program, and what are they going to do for this program, or what type of resources or commitment do they have to it specifically?
So the partnership comes in the 30,000 elevated view of what the ecosystem looks like to be able to support entrepreneurs. So that may come in the form of a letter of support saying, you know, we identified this as a good source for us to be able to provide our resources to for these entrepreneurs at different levels of the entrepreneur stage. Or it may come as a form of an actual MOU where they provide, you know, some sort of subsidy rate for whatever service they provide in addition to whatever we're providing. It comes in a variety of different ways. Another one that I can touch on is the tech transfer programs that are available with NASA. You have to have a memorandum of understanding with them to be able to have access to that technology if an entrepreneur is looking at using it to commercialize some sort of product that they're looking at incorporating for their business. So it comes in either or.
Yeah, no, I get it. I think it'd be good, and this is just one of the things to tag on, to see the list of partners and then kind of their level of partnership, right? Like a little just explanation. So like I guess for UTRGV, to make it simple, right?
Yeah.
It would be like providing classrooms and instructor, 'cause that's what they're doing, right?
Correct, yeah.
So that would be their partnership, and then it would be committed, confirmed, I don't know, MOU, letter of support, whatever it is. But I'd like to know really that if all these partners are committed specifically to this program, or they just said, yeah, of course we'll be there as a resource. Very different.
Yeah.
What Google for Startups is actually providing, what McAllen ISD, how they'll be a part of it, right? Because the partners are going to be critical to the success of the program in the long run.
Yeah.
And so we'd have to see that. The other thing, I guess, on the budget as a whole, you know, if you when you said pilot program, and then you're kind of already absorbing some of the salary costs, still a little confused as to 110 for a brand new person?
Up to 110 for a brand new person.
All for one person?
Yes. Yeah, it's just that
It's prorated, right? I mean, it's like,
Well,
we can do
per
prorated,
year.
or we can leave it at the 12-month projection so that we can continue to monitor some of these entrepreneurs that have gone through the programming.
But Jorge's absorbing the position.
We've changed the title to be able to just get them geared up for this programming as well, and be able to also entertain a lot of the community development that was done previously by another employee that is no longer with us.
Yeah.
But when we presented this initially, we wanted to have just somebody dedicated for this program. So that's, you know, I'm just looking into the file that was sent over. The other staff is for that fourth person that can just be dedicated for the programming itself. Jorge and the other staff members, including myself, would just be supporting the programming at that point.
you don't have identified that other person yet, right?
No, but we do have a job description that we want to go ahead and, you know, hopefully publish right away.
But that would be like administrative, right?
It would be administrative. It would be somebody that's going to be monitoring, doing the intake, providing the reporting back to the Development Corp, and working closely with us to be able to meet the objectives of what we're trying to do.
I guess what I was looking at is, you know, as a pilot program, I would assume grants, a lot of this seems to be able to ramp up before we even get into budget. So I would say, you know, grants would be scrapped and probably reviewed at budget. If the program was implemented, that knocks it down to 201, 500. You know, you've got marketing of 50,000, but it sounds like you can do a pretty good pilot with 23 applicants that you have right now. You
Yeah.
haven't done any marketing. 50,000 is a lot of marketing.
Yeah, and it's primarily for the branding, any promotional items that we want to be able to provide just to
Collateral material.
formalize it, yeah.
Okay. Just trying to think of how you could do it under, you know, create the pilot under the chamber's existing budget, if that was how y'all wanted to proceed, to see how we could,
I mean, we're pretty good at saving, and like I said, you know, those budgets are projected at the top amounts of what we possibly could be spending, but, you know, I think one of the comments, Commissioner Haddad, that you mentioned last time was, you know, why was there a need to brand this as its own thing, and why it didn't have anything related to the city as part of the branding? So we did that intentionally.
I remember that coming up.
Yeah.
Why you call it Innovation Texas, why it wasn't called McAllen. I remember
Yeah.
all that.
Yeah.
All that made sense. It has a bigger vision with McAllen as the
Yeah, I mean, we still want to have, as a matter of fact, the website that we went ahead and designed, we obviously have our partners, right, that we would like to include on there, the chamber as well as the city of McAllen. But we do have to invest a little bit more on creating a different brand to be able to break through the impression of entrepreneurs not wanting to get associated with institutions like banks or government. That seems to be something that deters entrepreneurs, specifically the minority group as well. So if we brand something completely different, we have a higher likelihood of them engaging as well. So, shorter answer, we don't anticipate to spend the $50,000 that we've itemized on that budget, but we do have that option if we need to do that.
But that's on the McAllen Chamber.
That's what we're committing, yes.
That's what your committee, plus the 12,000 of travel, plus 5,000 of membership.
When would be our next meeting, Roy? Or do we call these as needed?
We're trying to call them about every month. We don't usually need it, depending on financials really, but we could have another meeting.
We do need to go over the nonprofit approval,
Right.
Oh, yeah.
so that's going to come up pretty soon.
Only reason being, I had a lot of questions for Josh, but I think there's some additional information we could probably compile, related to the partners, maybe confirm.
Yeah, I'm looking at the
kind of see what
calendar.
see the detail on their partnership.
Yeah, we can create a spreadsheet to be able to detail that,
Yeah, and I think a couple case studies, if they exist, would be super great, especially from if it's ran through the program before.
I can also
The
obtain-
application itself, I'd like to see the application
Yeah,
itself.
it's-
That gives me a lot of a feel for the type of program it is.
While you're doing that, Josh, I would like to see the curriculum as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, curriculum is great. How many,
Yeah, 'cause
how many
right now
times
we
they
just-
meet?
it's pretty extensive, so I can
Yeah.
compile all of that for you. I know it's a brand new concept.
The day, the weekly, this class is going to be on this.
Yeah.
We don't have to see the actual book, right? Curriculum, but just the title of what that week is going to entail. What are they going to be learning? And so that'd be great.
Yeah,
Well,
That just comes from me. I don't know how the rest feel. I just, I'm not trying to be difficult. It's just that I see this as once you kick something like this off, this is going to be a reoccurring budget, right?
yeah,
And so I think we've got to be
We've gotta be
very
comfortable.
careful up front.
yeah.
I think the recommendation that Trey made to you, Roy, was, to get someone to really, put it in a nutshell for us,
Well, it's gonna be that guy.
Well, he did,
Yeah.
definitely. But
Oh, you've answered the questions very, very well.
No, but with at the staff level, at our
at the
staff.
staff level.
I think at the very least, the 75,000 for programming, we ought to get that going because to start a pilot program, you need to start it with at least the programming, some marketing. Yeah, there's got to be some. I can understand where the grant maybe can wait or based on Roy's recommendation, limited for the time being. But I think the direction, I don't know.
Yeah.
Not speaking for everybody, but that we ought to move forward.
You can't
Yeah,
go
I think we
wrong
need
with the programming itself, and
Right.
and as a matter of fact, I mean, I can
Right.
if it's an adequate process to go, I can always send Roy the criteria, the workshop, what that curriculum looks like,
Definitely.
just so you can get a sense of what that programming is going to be.
Y'all
And
want to see the programming before we approve programming? I mean, that's.
it's
Well, it's nationally recognized. It's international. It's got to be great. I would imagine, but
But you're not gonna spend all the doing that much. No, but you're not gonna be spending the 75,000 all up front.
no.
No. My thing was just
Just
implementing
first
a partial program,
10 to 20.
partially funded. I don't know how that ties your hands, right?
Well, we haven't mentioned anything about obtaining grants at the end of the day, right? The grants always help as that carrot at the end of the stick, right, to get entrepreneurs to start thinking about.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, but in
yeah.
a scenario where we hold off, you're already moving forward on this program.
Not necessarily. I mean, we just have things on hold to be able to get things launched. Our application portal, we have it on hold. It's done, but it's not public facing yet through a website, and we're just waiting to see what comes out of our partnership here with the Development Corp.
I would think on the grant side, we can allow. I mean, not allow, but Roy could give direction on that. I mean, as the manager of the Development Corporation.
Well, I think one of the things that I heard is that the grant would be at the tail end of this
Yeah.
process, and so, that still gives us time.
Yeah.
So maybe we do, we start the programming, we've already got it in the budget, we'll have to do a little reclass, but do the programming. If it is Jorge, then Jorge's already got a salary, so you don't have to worry about that immediately. And come back in a couple of weeks with the questions, answers to the questions that you have, and make a decision on the rest.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, but for now, he can move forward with
The program.
Programming.
programming. Okay.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
not
we-
marketing, I'd imagine, because that's important.
Yeah, we would just be funding the first cohorts.
Okay.
Yeah, in both English and Spanish.
And this is I assume gone to the chamber board. They're all in support.
Yeah, they're in support of engaging on more small business development, but we still have to provide a very detailed overview of what this programming is going to entail, and we've done that intentionally because we don't want to jump the gun and say, hey, this is what we're going to go ahead and launch, because we still don't have an agreement in place with the development corp.
Okay.
Yeah, the executive
I figured
committee.
they would give the green light to come to us before we give the green light
Well,
to go back to them.
the executive committee is aware of the programming, but not the entire board is 100% aware of exactly how the programming is going to start, when it's going to start.
It's like we're developing it along with you at the same time, so we're a true partner, it seems like.
Yeah, and the marketing comes from CVB, Omar, so that doesn't come from the development corp.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so we save more money there, but I think the consensus is we want to move forward, and
Yeah.
if you need further direction, you can talk to
At
Roy
the,
about that.
yeah, at the end of the day, what we're trying to do is we're trying to provide, most importantly, improved continued education for these entrepreneurs, right, to be able to scale up. We've run a scenario with the Small Business Support Fund previously, where we would just hand out, grants left and right. But this is more targeted. This is, before you receive your grant, let's help you identify how you want to grow the business to begin with, right? So to us, I think the important thing is the programming itself, being able to get those cohorts done.
Well, to get me comfortable, I want to see and hear that organization, what they've done, have some references from them, have some success stories, have some, maybe not so, but at least we know, what we could have.
Yeah.
What we could.
I can share some articles as well from some of the local ones that have gone through that programming, where they've started and where they've been. That's something that we can
So
do.
in 2 weeks, we could get that.
So Josh, real quick, just before we move on, because we're going to move on, but basically we want to see case studies. We want to have a listing of the partners, and do you have a letter of intent? Do you have? We want to see the application and curriculum and a summary, or you're going to give that to Roy, and then we want to see a projection of this program. The other thing I would say is whenever this gets out there and you do market it, I would be very careful how we put that message out there, not have the public just think, oh, this is going to go on. It may be, like you say, piloted, that, it's subject to whatever. I mean, so, but just because, as I understand it, we basically want to give it the green light, but we still have questions, but we don't want to hold you back from.
Yeah. As a matter of fact,
progress.
if you can remove some of the layers of the programming and just focus on the programming itself, like the continuing education part of things, that's still a big win in my book. That's still a massive win, because at the end of the day, we still want to have this event where we're exposing these entrepreneurs and ventures to people that would likely provide them with funding, whether that comes in the form of a loan, et cetera. It's just measuring how willing is the city in order to provide some sort of grant to get these folks to that next level. But
Ike, did you have a comment?
Well, I have some questions that I'd like to address with the board, but I think I need to do those in executive session. I need some clarification on some legal points in putting these documents together.
I guess right after we're done with Josh, so we
Yeah.
can go into executive session. I think we're almost done with
That's it.
Josh. Any other
We're
questions?
looking at June 5th. 2 weeks from today is Memorial Day, Monday, and then June 5th is the immediate following Monday. Does that sound okay?
Monday.
Monday, June 5th?
There's nothing going on. You can have it during lunch too, but
Lunch sounds good.
don't have lunch out there.
Okay.
But this time works too. No matter.
Well, lunch is better for me.
Yeah, me too.
Okay.
I don't ask that many questions when I have to.
No, I can talk about this topic
While
for
you're
hours.
eating- While you're eating, you won't ask that many questions?
Josh, thanks for coming and for answering all these questions that we got and for your support here on small business, to support small business in McAllen. We really appreciate it, so thank you very much for coming.
Yeah. No, I appreciate it.
Just before we take action, there are some legal points I just want to make sure I get clarified. If we could consider a motion to recess into executive session.
There you go.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. We're going into executive session.
Thank you all.
the South Water Treatment Plant, which is obviously the bulk of the design project.